Hey, what is going on, everyone? Sorry, it's weird. I have to look at the camera now as well. Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is Dorrani from VG247, and I'm joined by the Xbox fanboy himself. No, is it PlayStation fanboy?
No,
He's a PlayStation fanboy.
Xbox fanboy. I'm an Xbox
He's
fanboy.
certified. Yeah, he wants to make sure that everybody knows that he's an Xbox fanboy.
Oh God, yes. Tom and Alex are here, and we're just messing around really at the moment. But we are speaking about the Xbox and Bethesda showcase on June 13th. Guys, what are we saying about it?
I think it's a big deal, right? It's one of the only confirmed big conferences for the E3 period, really. And I think Xbox is in a position where it has to start showing the goods. Like, people are like, yeah, they've got all the studios, they've got Game Pass, Series X is great, Series S is great. But then you look at what Sony are doing, they're actually releasing good games that look great and showing off good looking games. And Microsoft are just like, well, here's a CG trailer for something that's coming 3 years' time. So I think this is the year that they have to do something and show off something impressive.
Yeah. What were they doing like between the last showcase they had and now? What were they like doing? Do we have like any ideas? So,
well, I mean,
if it wasn't to show not complete games, but like gameplay footage and stuff, what were they doing?
Well, the thing is, they're in a weird position because you look at Sony, right? And Sony have all these studios, nice and established. They're excellent at making games. They've got franchises that are spun up, like The Last of Us and Horizon and things like that. So they're ready to go into the next generation, and we've been able to see that in what Sony's been doing. Microsoft, I think you could ask anyone there, you could ask Phil Spencer, and he would say, we weren't in a great position because of various decisions that were made, throughout the Xbox One's lifespan. They had a few studios, but not many, and that's why they've been on this spending spree and bought loads of places. But the places that they've bought and the places that they've set up aren't necessarily in that position to just put out games straight away. So I think the first thing that I'd say about this year is I'm hopeful that we're going to see some good stuff, but I'm also tempering my expectations because it's going to take a couple of years for these studios to spin up. So the Initiative, for instance, who are making Perfect Dark, that's a new studio making a new game. Perfect Dark sounds like it's going to be one of Microsoft's attempts at a real prestige game, but they've got to spin up to the point where they can make a game, and that takes time.
Yeah, I think what they lack. You look at like what Sony did with Horizon Forbidden West the other week. Like, can you imagine? I can't try to think of a game that Microsoft would show off in that way, and people would be excited to see. And at the moment, they don't have anything like that. They don't have a prestige game like Gears. Gears really is the closest they've got. I think Halo they tried and it failed horribly because the state that game was in. So I think that's the position they've got to get to, where they could do a single showcase for a game and people would be really excited for it. Like Perfect Dark would work for that.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this in the shower this morning because I knew we were going to be talking about this, and I was like, it's interesting. Sony and Microsoft have almost flipped. You think about the original Xbox and the PlayStation 3 generations, and Microsoft was sort of making a fair amount, I would say, of groundbreaking stuff. They obviously were making stuff like Halo, which was redefining online multiplayer, and making stuff like Gears, which really kicked off a whole new genre of third-person shooter games. Sony, meanwhile, was sort of, people are going to be mad when I say this, but they were making their versions of that. They were making their knockoffs of that. They were making Resistance and Killzone and stuff like that.
Which I would love to see come back. I'm just going to throw that out there. I would love to see them come back.
But I think Resistance sucks. I don't think any of those games are good. Anyway, the point is, Sony now are making those games that are forging forward, and Microsoft is just making another Halo, another Gears, and it's sort of like, you look at I think you're right, Tom. I think Perfect Dark is their chance to make a real prestige game. And when you look at that studio, that's in Santa Monica in California. They hired people from Crystal Dynamics who worked on Tomb Raider. They hired people from the God of War team, people from Naughty Dog. It's clearly that is what they are trying to do with Perfect Dark. But I don't think that necessarily is going to matter this month, because I'm not convinced we're going to see it, to be honest. I think it's probably a ways out yet.
How long away do you think it is? Like, just roughly speaking, few years.
I think probably it's a game that I think it could be next year, but I just don't think there's any chance that it could be this year. You know, that studio was founded and was working. It wasn't like they announced it and said we're setting up a studio. Like who did that recently? Like Time Splitters, right? They announced that Time Splitters was coming back. In the same post as they announced that they were starting the studio. It's going to be a year before the studio is ready to make a game anyway. So Time Splitters is probably like 5 years away. They didn't do that. The Coalition was running for, I think, at least a year before they announced Perfect Dark. So they're clearly a way away, but I just don't think, I think this year's too soon. But I guess we're getting into the meat.
Coalition?
Not Coalition, Initiative, sorry. Coalition obviously is the Gears guys. But my understanding is the Coalition is sort of helping on Perfect Dark. I think they're helping that team to get the shooting right, basically. That's the other thing that's interesting also is that Microsoft have got all these studios and they can begin to share now in the way that Sony shares. So in the way that, you know, Naughty Dog's prowess gets shared across to Guerrilla and the stuff Guerrilla's good at gets shared back across and so on and so forth. We can now hopefully see that where, you know, you're going to have the Coalition helping out on Perfect Dark and you're going to have Rare helping out with all the graphical stuff that Rare's always been excellent at across the studios. And, you know, they've got id now, so it's like if they've got any fast-paced shooting game, like surely the Halo and the Doom teams are talking at this point now, right? So that's the interesting thing about
that'd be awesome.
the infrastructure they've built, but I think it's probably still too soon for us to see any real benefits from that.
Yeah. Should we? I mean, we could talk about like loosely, but should we go through the studios that Microsoft has and just decide like, yeah, too early for them to show anything. We might see something from them. We've heard this, we've heard that. Just as because there's a lot of. If you go down the list, I'm just scrolling through, and it's a big list. Like this, there are big like publishing label now is massive for Microsoft. So you'd hope some of these studios are going to show something. So I mean, first off, I guess 343 is the big one. Halo will be at E3.
Well, they're going to show
probably multiplayer focus, maybe.
It seems that way based on there was some sort of insider that said this on Twitter, but also the preview image they put out is of a lot of Spartans as opposed to a hero image of Master Chief, and we haven't seen the multiplayer. And I think that's a good opportunity for them to show, you know, how much the game has improved. Maybe they'll show I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we get a campaign trailer because I think they've got to get out in front of that graphics thing. But you know, I think it's an ideal time to show multiplayer. And don't forget, of course, it was the case, right, that Halo Infinite wasn't going to launch with multiplayer. Am I right in thinking that?
I think
possibly. I remember hearing that. Yeah.
So obviously now the delay. One of the advantages of the delay is they're going to be able to show the multiplayer and have the multiplayer at launch. So that will help the game as well.
Yeah, I think like you, I think you're right. They have to show some glimpse of the single player, the campaign, because that's what they got the heat from, was how bad that looked. Well, how not next gen it looked, so to speak. So I think they need to show something, whether it's just a trailer or a small little gameplay clip or something. I know there'll be like people saying they can't show much because they're focusing on getting the game ready, but this is a big chance for them to show off that the game actually is in a good shape. So
there's hints to a new game mode. I'm hearing Battle Royale might make its way to Halo.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think that'll be awesome, man. Drop shipping and all sorts of stuff. That'll be dope. Now, the Coalition is next.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't think we're going to see anything from them. I think we had Gears 5 and then we had the little Hivebusters expansion, which was really good actually. So I think, really, I mean, they might announce something that's coming, but I can't see them showing off anything. I think it's just too early.
I think it's going to be another. I think they have to move the story on, considering how Gears 5 ended. I won't say, but I don't think they can take the traditional one of just continuing on the previous story. I would like to see what they do bring, though.
I would be interested to see if they. I think it would make a lot of sense internally at Microsoft to allow that team to make something that isn't Gears in between Gears 5 and whatever is next. And so I'll be interested to see if that happens. I don't know that would be something that we might learn here. I don't think so. But it is that thing of maybe there's been a small team making a smaller game that we'll see as part of E3 while the rest of the studio has been on Gears. I think we'll see more of that. We'll see that with Obsidian and stuff, I think.
Yeah. Compulsion Games.
So obviously they did
I think they've
Contrast
got,
and We Happy Few.
Yeah, I think they've got a decent chance of showing something because We Happy Few was a while ago now. I mean, I guess they've probably been
2018.
staffing up for whatever the next project is. But they're one of the studios, I think one of the earlier ones they acquired. I think there's a reasonable shot we'll get at least an announcement from them.
Double Fine Production, sorry.
So obviously, Psychonauts 2 is not yet out. So I think it's a lock. I should think that we will get a release date for Psychonauts 2 because right now it is just dated for 2021. I think. I wonder if they are going to want to wait. For Microsoft's in an interesting conundrum here, right? Because on one hand, the logical thing to do is probably to wait until Psychonauts 2 is out before talking about whatever Double Fine do next. On the other hand, Psychonauts is coming to PlayStation. So do they want to announce the next Double Fine game that is going to be an Xbox exclusive to sort of show, hey, this is what we're going to have? I wonder. I think if it's something, what my prediction there would be, if it's something new, then it won't be here. If they happen to somehow be making a sequel to something they've made in the past that's beloved, if Microsoft's gone to EA and purchased the Brutal Legend IP, that sort of thing you can announce right with a CG trailer. But I don't think that's going to happen, right? I think they will focus. We'll get a nice trailer, maybe a gameplay demo for Psychonauts 2, and we'll see them again later in the year.
Yeah. Just enlighten me. What's like the appeal to Psychonauts? Because I see a lot of people speaking about it, but when I look at the gameplay, I don't see anything revolutionary. So what's the deal here? Just quickly.
Fun third-person platform adventure game. It's got a cute and clever and slightly snarky, I guess, story, which I think people like the tone of it. I think that's it really. I mean, the original one came out at a sort of, I would say it was at the tail end of a really great time for platformers. And so I think people are excited for this because they're hopeful that this could sort of be a revival of those great platformers we had, sort of, PS2, N64, GameCube era, and then platformers slowly started to taper off. And Psychonauts came out right at the end of that. It was 2005, so it was not long before the Xbox 360 came out. And so I think people are just excited because if you like platformers and you haven't got a Nintendo platform, up until recently, with the Crash and Spyro remasters, it's been a pretty rough time. But we've had those Crash Spyro remasters. We've got Psychonauts 2. And I'm sure people will be looking at Psychonauts 2 and saying, great, now make Banjo-Kazooie 4. But yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. Moving on, we have the Initiative.
So this is the Perfect Dark team,
Perfect
right?
Dark.
And they were built to make that game. And for people who don't, follow the nerdiness of the news, the Initiative is in Santa Monica in California, which is an area that has typically been dominated by Sony developers. So like the God of War team is around there. It's not a million miles away from Naughty Dog, stuff like that. And so, the Tomb Raider guys and the Avengers guys, Crystal Dynamics, are in that area too. So there's a lot of high value, high prestige studios in that area. So I think Microsoft were like, right, we want to have a studio here and we want to poach a load of staff from those places. And they've done that. So there's people gone from Sony, from Naughty Dog, from the God of War team. What is the God of War team called? I can't remember.
Sony Santa Monica?
Oh, it is just Sony Santa Monica.
Sony Santa Monica.
They should give them a proper name, man. But yeah, so the initiative was built to sort of steal. For a while, that studio was led by the guy who sort of led the charge on the Tomb Raider reboot at Square. So it's like, okay, let's put this guy who very successfully rebooted one of the most iconic female-led video game franchises of the 90s in charge of another reboot of exactly the same thing, but in a different genre. So, but I don't think we're going to see Perfect Dark. If I'm honest, I think it's probably too soon. I'm hopeful. I am a huge
CG trailer.
well, they did that, right? They did that for the announcement at the Game Awards, and I think they had to announce it because it was getting to worst kept secret territory. And also, that's a good thing to announce an IP so everybody loves. Well, not everybody, but many people love is coming back. But I think it's probably too soon. I would love to see it, but right now we don't even know what that game is. Like the original Perfect Dark, because obviously we're first-person shooters. But the way they've talked about this game, I could see this going either way. I could easily see this being a third-person game. You've also got to look at the Xbox portfolio and go, God damn, they got a lot of first-person games. They've got Doom, they got Halo. They've got, although you can play them in third person, the Bethesda RPGs are best played in first person. They've got Arcane, who have pretty much only ever made first person games. So maybe they're going to want to make. And also, all of Sony's big prestige games are third person games. So maybe they're going to want to make Perfect Dark a third person game. So maybe we'll get a bit of news on that, but I doubt it. I think we'll hear about that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that resurfaces again at the Game Awards at the end of the year this year, the same place it was announced.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Tom?
No. I mean, did the initiative? Did they show off ages ago? Did they show off some kind of example of a game they were working on before we knew about Perfect Dark, like a spy themed thing?
I don't know. It wasn't very. Anyone who was paying attention, I think, would have recognized what they were working on. So you might be thinking of that in the sense that they announced the studio and they showed the logo. And just like the Coalition's logo looks like the Gears cog, this logo looked a lot like the Datadyne symbol from Perfect Dark. And anybody who's a Perfect Dark fan instantly went, that looks like the Datadyne logo. And then they had concept art on their website and it was all of a cyberpunk world. And everyone was like, huh, the logo and that. But I don't know if they ever showed... if they ever showed any footage. They did when they announced Perfect Dark, put out a second YouTube video apart from the trailer where they showed some concept art and they talked a little bit about how basically they don't want it to just be a shooter. And again, I think that comes back to Microsoft's got enough shooters. They want to actually make a spy game, an espionage game. But I don't think they showed anything, no.
Wow. Next we have In Exile, is that how you say it? In Exile Entertainment?
Yeah.
Or am I saying it's completely wrong?
No, that's totally right, and I don't think we'll see anything from them because obviously, unless there's any DLC for Wasteland, but obviously Wasteland 3 only
they've got that.
Literally.
They've got the DLC launching, haven't they? So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
so
it'd be
we'll get a trailer for that, but unless there's any further DLC, I mean, it's not the time for them.
Yeah. Next, we have a big one, Mojang Studios.
So, I mean, yeah, there's always the lip service to Minecraft every year, and that will happen again here. So we'll see what it is. We'll see if it's anything new. I think the one big X factor here is obviously I've been playing around quite a bit with Minecraft RTX on the PC, which is a ray traced version of Minecraft. There's some articles on VG247.com, and I think there's actually there's an old video on the YouTube channel as well, where I take a look at that. It looks bonkers, but obviously that's running on NVIDIA hardware.
Yeah.
And it requires DLSS, which is an NVIDIA thing also. The consoles run on AMD stuff. So to get a ray traced implementation of Minecraft is going to be a different thing on Xbox Series X and S. But I do think that, we know that's coming, they've said, and that might be something where we might learn a little bit more about this here, potentially. Minecraft's a great game.
I don't think it's going to be a massive.
We might get another Minecraft spin-off.
They've got. I mean, like Minecraft Dungeons is a year old like this month, I think. So who knows? Another spin-off might happen. I think with Minecraft they've got Caves and Cliffs, haven't they? And that's first half is launching on the 8th, I think. And then the next one's Christmas-ish. So whether or not they have something else on top of that, like who knows?
Yeah,
I'd like to see.
To be honest,
I'd like to see RTX. I'd like to see ray traced on console. I really would.
It's a big game, Minecraft, but it's kind of just there. It just sort of lives on its own, basically. But next we have Ninja Theory.
So obviously Hellblade 2 is coming, so I don't think we're going to see anything else from them other than that. But I'm sure we'll see Hellblade 2, right? Like, was that the first Series X game ever shown?
It was, because that was part of the Game Awards, wasn't it? I think. Didn't they show the trailer for that? So I think, I
think it was shown before the console was announced, right? Yeah.
I think it's definitely been around. Like, it's been known about for a long time. So they need to show. That's one of the games, like what we talked about at the beginning. Like, are Microsoft going to show off a proper next gen Xbox game? I think people have been looking to this as like it's Unreal Engine 5.
Game.
Yeah, and like even if we don't see much of the actual gameplay, but just something showing us what the visuals look like in engine, at least, without and like even just wandering through the environment, something like that, just to get an idea of what this thing's going to look like and show a leap over what we've had already.
Hellblade's that's not the only thing that Ninja Theory have developed, right?
No. So they've been around for a long time. I think lots of their stuff was like licensed to other publishers and stuff, but
because I'm looking at Enslaved, Odyssey to the West.
Yes, that was a Namco game.
And Heavenly Sword.
That was a Sony first party game, and obviously they did the extremely divisive Devil May Cry spin-off reboot. I don't know what you want to call it, where it was in its own continuity and it was the same characters but a very different vision of them. I think that game's really good, but a lot of people have strong feelings about that.
Yeah. So do you not think that all their focus is going to be on Hellblade?
Hellblade's a lock. Hellblade's a lock.
Yeah, they've got that other sort of little project. I can't remember what it's called. The thing they're showing off with the photorealistic graphics. I can't remember what the game's called, but it's like a smaller game, possibly to do with mental health. I can't remember exactly, but they've shown like
is it Project Mara? Right?
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's the one. So I mean, I don't know if that's E3 material, but that is another thing that they're working on.
Mental health is important, Tom.
The thing is, obviously, you got to remember that they launched Bleeding Edge just last year, and that was obviously a multiplayer game. It was not successful, and they very quietly ended development on it in January.
That game sucks.
So that means there is a team there that isn't doing anything, but also they only got freed up from that project in January. So I think it'll be a while before we learn what that team is doing.
Yeah, Bleeding Edge. Whoa, that game was something.
It did have the dolphin character though. The dolphin character was cool.
They put a lot into that as well. By the way, I'm going to say they put a lot into the marketing for that. I remember everyone being sponsored for that one. Next we have I'm freaking lost on this list now. Is it Obsidian? Obsidian Entertainment.
So Obsidian's in a funny position, really, an interesting position, because they got purchased, and I think for them it was like, finally, we've got some money. Because Obsidian has always, God love them, they make great games, but they've always sort of gone from deal to deal. And I remember I went out there for, they did a lot of work on like a Russian World of Tanks knockoff called Armored Warfare. They were the main developer on that for a while, and I went on a press trip for Armored Warfare and went out to Obsidian's headquarters, and they were quite honest in saying Armored Warfare was really allowing them to do other things, and at the time they were doing South Park and Pillars and stuff like that, and they'd get a big fat check for doing that game, and it would open it up. Obviously, that's no longer an issue now. They got that Microsoft money, so they've got Avowed, right, which is their big first-person role-playing game. And when that was announced, it was like, this is going to be Microsoft's Elder Scrolls. Interesting now, Microsoft has the actual Elder Scrolls. And so what's going to be really interesting for Obsidian is like, because Obsidian were always the, they were always the RPG studio that did a version of other people's games. So like BioWare did Knights of the Old Republic. BioWare didn't want to do Knights of the Old Republic. They wanted to do their own universes with Jade Empire and Mass Effect and Dragon Age. So Obsidian did Knights of the Old Republic too. And then Bethesda made Fallout 3, and they wanted to do Elder Scrolls next again. So they wanted another Fallout game in the interim. So Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas. And then even, BioWare was having success with Mass Effect, and Sega was like, would like a piece of that pie. And Obsidian made Alpha Protocol, which is like a Mass Effect, not a Mass Effect clone, but a Mass Effect like. So, but now they're in the same house as Bethesda, so they're going to have to differentiate themselves. And I think we will probably see some Avowed and get an idea of how it might do that, which will be exciting.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good to see.
I think one of those games looked really good. I remember that one getting a buzz.
Yeah, it'd be really good to see. For what Alex said, I think it'd be good to see. Like Avowed was one of those games that we got shown that was just like a CG, like this kind of going to look like this sort of kind of reveals. So getting one of those with a actual, even if it's a tiny look at like a couple of like 20 seconds of wandering around, seeing like a small clip of what the game could be, that's kind of all they need to do with that, because I think people are expecting it's a way off. So I don't think we need to see like a proper in-depth Halo style presentation, but just we'd still going on it. It looks cool. Here you go. Have a glimpse.
I also think Obsidian has always been a multi-game studio, so there's definitely going to be a question about what are the other teams working on. Obviously, they did the Outer Worlds with THQ's indie division, private division, and that game was successful, I think.
Grounded.
And they did Grounded too. If I had to guess, I think Obsidian is a free game studio now. They seem to have expanded a bit. So my point is, I wouldn't be surprised to see a new game or possibly an Outer Worlds sequel, something like that.
Yeah. Cool. Next, we have Playground Games.
So they're doing Fable and they're also doing Forza Horizon, right? So two different. They're local to me, actually. Two different, literally, I believe that's two different buildings on opposite sides of town that are making those two games. So they're very much separate. So Fable development is not going to slow down the development on Forza. Is this a Horizon year or is this a normal Forza year? It's normal.
I
Forza
can't remember.
Year, right?
I think it might be because last year was the Forza year, I think.
But it didn't happen,
but we never
right?
got Forza. So yeah, it feels like we're like a year behind. So this year, you'd think if there was going to be one, it would be the Sim series, and then next year would be
and
Horizon.
They did show
who
that.
knows? Like, yeah.
Well, they did show
we saw
the Sim though, right?
That clip. Yeah. I guess
so
it's
I think probably maybe you do a developer diary for Fable. Like that's the sort of thing you do. You let the new team speak about it and explain how they see their vision for this series, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see Horizon. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it'd be brilliant to see a next gen Horizon wherever they've set it. Like there's rumors about. I mean, you could probably put a rumor for every single location in the world, but I'd love to see like what they could do on a next gen version, because it looks amazing already on like the Xbox One version looks great. So to see what they could do, fully taking advantage of Series X, etc., would be great. But yeah, I think possibly we'll see the more on the Sim version rather than the more my preferred branch of the series anyway.
Yeah.
With Forza, how do they improve it further? Because as you just said, it's always looked amazing. So like what else do they add to like the Forza games and stuff like that?
The simulation just gets better, right?
Yeah.
It just gets more realistic.
More controls.
I do think we're at the point of diminishing returns on diminishing returns of graphics, in the sense that racing games were always the first games that you looked at, right? Like you'd always look at Gran Turismo or Forza or bloody Project Gotham, whatever, to get an idea of what a new console was capable of. That's not the case anymore. But you can still, like, there's always more detail when it comes to cars, always.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else to say about Playground Games, sorry?
No, I think it'll be like what Alex has said. Like, I think with Fable, like they showed off the CG trailer, right? And you got a sense of what the game might be loosely with that. But I think it would be good to get like Alex says, like a talk from the developers, so fans of Fable get an idea of, yeah, it's in safe hands, because like Fable's had a rough time of it, but people do still really love those first 2 games in particular.
Cool. Next we have Rare. There's no studios at the end of it, just Rare.
So, they are obviously continuing to have great success with Sea of Thieves. They had, is it the 5th anniversary already? Is that right? 3rd anniversary, 4th anniversary, something like that. They had a milestone.
For Sea of Thieves?
I don't think it's 5. Maybe it's 3. But they had a big milestone, and they did a bunch of in-game events. And I saw loads of people. It feels like there's more and more people playing that all the time. So that's good. That's lovely. Obviously, they've got Everwild as well. We don't know what that game is yet. We don't know what type of game it is, how it works, anything. So it'll be interesting to see that game if they show it. But I don't know. The thing about Sea of Thieves was it appeared to be a really iterative development, I guess you'd say. So is Everwild the same? In which case, they might not be ready to show it. As in, it didn't really take shape as what it became until quite late on. They experimented a lot.
Oh, okay.
And so it would have been difficult. Like Sea of Thieves got announced, and then we didn't hear anything from it for quite some time, and then it emerged. And I wonder if Everwild might end up being the same.
Yeah, I think my thought about Rare is, like, are they now just a games as a service studio, or are they also going to do like what you might associate with them from the past, so like a Conquer game or something like that? Like, maybe that's the kind of thing that gets farmed out to another developer and they work with. But that, if I was like to pick,
that's what happened
something
with
I'd love to see. Yeah, I mean, Battletoads, I think the thing about Battletoads is that people wanted Battletoads, but did they really want Battletoads? I don't know. Whereas Conquer is the kind of game that I think, yes, like if they could partner with a good studio, that's the kind of game that people would actually be properly excited for, and like it wouldn't just be the game that people forgot about and then got released. It was like, oh, Battletoads is out.
I got really excited for a second there because looking at the Rare are the people who started Killer Instinct, and that's one of my favorite.
Well, actually, I was just about to say,
they don't even have this. They don't have it. They didn't make the most recent one.
So not entirely. They were involved. They it's there the same way like the Initiative is making Perfect Dark, but that's originally a Rare game, and so of course Rare are sort of helping them and talking to them about what it means to be a Perfect Dark game, and they did the same with Killer Instinct, and that was Double Helix, who got purchased by Amazon and then closed down for the first season. Oof. But the subsequent seasons, or did they get closed down? I don't want to say that as definite fact, but I'm pretty sure Amazon nuked most of their game development studios. But yeah, so that was Double Helix. But then, what are they called? Iron Galaxy took over for the later series, and we don't know what Iron Galaxy is doing. And I would not be surprised if they are making a Killer Instinct 2. And it wouldn't surprise me. They're not a Microsoft first party, but it would not surprise me if that existed or even was announced here.
Yeah, I mean, that was a launch game, right?
Successful.
Yeah. I mean, and I think people look back on that and think actually that was really good, and they liked it, and it had a lot of support post-release, and I think that would work well, particularly now with Game Pass and everything else. Like, I think it would do very well for Microsoft. I think it's like one thing that I'd like to see, but probably wouldn't, is Viva Pinata. It feels like in a world where Animal Crossing is like so huge and like farming sims and everything else are all so popular, they've got this really great franchise that's been dead forever, Like I can't remember, the last one was probably on the DS or something. I can't remember the last one came out, but that is a series that has such potential in today's gaming world, where that kind of game does really well, and like Game Pass and everything else. But I mean, I doubt we'll see anything from like that, but I'd love to see that come back.
Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise was the last one on DS. Yes, you're correct.
I went to a press event for that.
So you really want this to come back?
Yeah, it's great.
It's really good. It's really good.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
You should play it.
One of the best games on the 360.
I played the first one. I played the first ever one.
Well, you should know it's really good then, Dorrani. I mean, what we arguing about?
Do you know what it is? I feel like I was young and even though it might have been, it's not even catered towards my age at the time, but I think I was so caught up in the shooters of
you were too cool,
the system had,
too cool for that. Yeah,
basically, yeah. I was just what's this, man? It's for nerds. Get this. Nah, actually, I wouldn't mind. I'm over exaggerating about Viva Pinata. Yeah, it was okay. I didn't have an Xbox at the time. It was actually my uncle's Xbox, and he loved it. Grown man, he loved it. I was like, okay, dude.
It's a great game.
Road, but,
it's a great game.
Yeah,
he's got taste. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I'm gonna counteract it and just say again, Killer Instinct. If that gets announced, I will lose my mind because that's one of my favorite fighting games.
I'd love to see a KI2, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think over the years, Microsoft supported that last Killer Instinct game with like 4 seasons of downloadable content and some. They supported by putting a load of money into tournaments. Like they pumped a load of money.
Yeah.
And when you think about fighting games are a blind spot for Microsoft. It's like Street Fighter was a PlayStation exclusive last generation. Sony has, I bet, to be honest, I would not be surprised if Street Fighter 6 is a Sony exclusive, PlayStation and PC. And, Sony has just bought a stake in Evo. So Sony clearly got thoughts about fighting games.
Yeah.
So if I was Microsoft, I would be looking at that and going, we need to do something in the fighting game space.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else to say about Rare?
No, I think we basically want all of their games to come back, and that's it.
Every single one of them. Every single one.
Not Conquer.
Wait, hold on.
Not Conquer. I don't think Conquer would work.
No, I don't think Conquer would work. But different. It'd have to be different. But
I don't think that brand of humour works as well anymore. It was very 90s. I love it, but it was very much of its time. Unless you took Conquer and sort of evolved it in the way that South Park has sort of grown. Because people don't think it, but South Park has really changed. I don't think it would work. But yeah, I'd love to be proved wrong,
Yeah, it couldn't just be a direct, like, exactly the same humour, parodies, etc. of everything that they did before. But I think it still has a place if someone smart took it and reworked it to be like a modern video game. But yeah, I think it just be something that I think would have the kind of fan interest that a lot of Microsoft games don't have at the moment.
Yeah. Turn 10 Studios.
Well, Forza's going to be there, like we said.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I do wonder if there's going to be with Turn 10 and Forza, whether they're going to do a kind of early access. I think they might have sort of alluded to some of this, like ongoing development, maybe like a test period kind of thing, like get that out earlier, even though it's not ready. Because I mean, you look at some games, like Sony released the last Gran Turismo, and that was like so bare bones, and then they added and added and added. So I think you can get away with that, particularly with a racing game where it's very easy to add content to. And if they also make it, like, I assume there'll be a strong online element to it, they could follow a similar model, because that worked quite well for was it GT Sport. So I mean, I'd like it obviously there to be more on day one, but if they go early access, you can get away with having it pretty bare bones.
Cool. Undead Labs.
State of Decay 3 is coming, so that was another one that was a CG trailer, very, very short stinger. So the question is, does that game exist yet, or are they just saying, we're working on it? I expect it'll be mentioned, if not shown. but I would hope that is one. That's a massive candidate for early access. You've got if you've got a Game Pass subscription, you get it early, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I do wonder with that. State of Decay has always been a bit clunky. It's never felt like proper first party, brilliant, like exclusive. I mean, people love it, right? And it has a lot going for it. I mean, I enjoyed playing the first. I haven't really played much of the second one, but it's the kind of game where you think, are they now going to have more resources? Is it going to come out and be a lot slicker, look a lot better, etc.? Because you look at that, people. That's one of the games like people looked at it and like, look at this compared to what Sony's doing, and it's like night and day difference in terms of like overall quality polish. Even though the core game experience is good,
it's got that. It's got that emergent thing going on as well, though, right? Where it's like it's all about sort of the way the world reacts to you and stuff. But I will admit, I went to a preview event for State of Decay 2, and I ain't seen a game perform that way in a long time. It got there in the end, but man, that preview event was like, I just remember there was another member of the media who like was crying laughing because his build had gone so wrong, and it was so funny what had happened. Yeah, but I think there's an opportunity.
They would have to do a lot in State of Decay 3.
Well, it's a new game, right? So it's an opportunity for them to redefine the series if they want. But what I think is, I don't think Microsoft wants to turn State of Decay into The Last of Us. I think they like that it's this online emergent thing that's sort of janky, that the kids play, and it's things happen unexpectedly and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I played it. I played it ever so briefly, and it's one of those games, when it just doesn't click straight away. Like immediately I was like, what the hell is this? Like things just weren't working right. So they would have to do a lot to make it into something. And they've got what's that days before, what's the game coming out, the other zombie sort of open world zombie thing that's coming from that, the what's the other one when they showed like the Jeep in the mud mechanics the other day? What's the name of the game? The zombie game?
I can't remember what that's called, but that's like a new studio, isn't it? From like, that's not a Microsoft thing, is it? I don't think.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No. But I'm saying, but like they're gonna have to compete. Like State of Decay is gonna have to compete with games like that. You know what I mean? So,
but State of Decay's big advantage is that it's a freebie in Game Pass. So it's the sort of game where, especially because it's multiplayer, you and your friends can all download it without any of you paying for it. And I think that's the power.
Yeah.
That's the power of that.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite. I hope it does well because I like that sort of open worldy vibe with the zombies. So I hope State of Decay 3 does do well.
Yeah. Should we move on to Bethesda stuff?
Yeah, just worth quickly noting, Age of Empires will be there. Almost certainly Age of Empires 4 is on the way. That is World's Edge now. That's the new studio that they've opened to deal with that. And Age of Empires 4, they've obviously got the Definitive Edition HD remasters. They've got Age of Empires 4. Looks exciting, looks great. I'm super pumped for it. I think the one X factor question for that is, it's obviously PC only. Would they do an Xbox version? They have done Xbox versions of these strategy games before, with Halo Wars, and EA did some great Command & Conquer games. So we'll see. And if there was going to be an announcement like that, you'd think it would be here. Anyway, Bethesda.
We have Alpha Dog Games. Hold on.
Well, I would just
mobile.
I would just run down them. So there's Alpha Dog, there's Arcane, there's Bethesda Game Studios, there's id, there's Machine Games, there's Roundhouse Studios, which is the former Human Head people. There's Tango Gameworks out in Japan, and there's ZeniMax Online. So some of these we can get out of the way, like off the bat. So like Alpha Dog is a mobile studio. So one is curious because the Xbox Game Pass app is on mobile. Does Microsoft still want to make mobile games, like normal, traditional mobile games? If that's the case, I wonder what these guys will end up retooling towards. I don't think they'd end up closed. I think Microsoft would say to them, right, you want to make something for a Game Pass? Arcane obviously have got Deathloop coming, and that is imminent, right? So
yeah. Enlighten me on something, guys.
Yes.
So, ZeniMax Media and Bethesda Softworks, are these I thought are these one company or are they two separate companies? 'Cause I'm getting
ZeniMax
confused
was
now.
Bethesda's parent company, and so when Microsoft didn't actually buy Bethesda, Microsoft bought ZeniMax, and so
Okay.
all
But
these
broadly,
companies
I
are
mean,
part of that.
people refer to them as Bethesda. I mean, it's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
Yeah.
that's what people recognise as the name.
Okay.
but yeah, so
this makes
Arcane.
more sense.
I don't know if they would announce a new game here, but I think there is one X factor, which obviously Deathloop, and the same actually for Tango Gameworks, who've got Ghostwire Tokyo. Those are first on PlayStation for a year, I believe, but they are also on PC.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
one thing that Microsoft can do to sort of let the tires out, let the air out of the tires of Sony on those deals, is obviously make sure that they go into Game Pass straight away on PC. Maybe even make them available via xCloud through the
I was
PC
thinking
versions.
that, like, is there a loophole with the streaming stuff as well? I mean, it wouldn't be ideal the way to play those games, but it would be a way to play them still.
And so we'll see if they're that petty. I think it would be extremely funny, but also I think they know it might end up being bad PR, and it might just be best to quietly put those games out, and then when they come to Game Pass in a year, make a lot more noise.
Yeah. Starfield. Let's just because we're speaking about it broadly. Starfield. Do you think that's going to be spoken about?
Yeah, I
don't think it's even going to be.
I think it leads the whole thing. I think Starfield will be the first thing we see when this broadcast starts. I think it'll be the first game. It'll be a cold open, and it'll be Starfield. It'll be a lengthy. I think they will do the same thing. I don't think it's going to be this year anymore. I think that was the original plan. I think it's changed, but I do think that it's going to be a lot like Fallout 4 in the sense that they're not just going to announce that game. They're not just going to reveal that game. They are going to show a significant amount of that game, maybe 20 minutes or something. Do a real deep dive and then say, see you in 2021, 2022 even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And they'll
Would
slap
you
a
say
massive
that
Xbox
Starfield
on the end of it as well.
Yeah, well, and
Do you
this is
think
the thing.
Starfield and Halo are the biggest games for this whole conference?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. I think those are the two big heavy hitters.
Yeah. I was gonna say that I'm so scared for games like Starfield now because of Cyberpunk. And you know when a game is so heavily anticipated and it's like, oh my god, this game's gonna be amazing, it's gonna be God's gift to gaming, and then you get something that is just not up to scratch.
Yeah,
Well,
Bethesda have had that. They've got that history, right? But I think even I was going to say even Bethesda games haven't shipped as bad. But I mean, a Cyberpunk. But then you think about Skyrim on PS3 was not a
disaster.
good time. So, but it's like people kind of expect some sort of jankiness with Bethesda games. But I think this will be a big thing for Microsoft as like a prestige game. It has to ship in a good state, I think, because a lot is riding on this. It'll be the first big Bethesda game launching on Xbox and PC. They want to show like you want this. You don't like get an Xbox to play this game or get Game Pass, whatever. It's not on PlayStation, and if it comes out and it is a mess, that will not work with that plan at all.
Yeah. I'm just scared for it. It's just concern. It's just concern. The Indiana Jones game. What's happening with that?
So I think
it's from
that's
Machine, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a while off. I think that was really announced because Disney, as the company that it is, has to have a degree of openness with its investors about what's going on. I think it was also announced to help Machine to recruit. It's always a great way. This is why Cyberpunk was announced so early, right? I mean, it didn't quite work out the way you'd want it in that game, but they announced it so they could go, come and work for us on this new IP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think
that's going to be exclusive?
We don't know.
Look at it this way. Microsoft didn't buy Bethesda to have them make PlayStation games. They bought Bethesda to have them make games that are going to deliver value to the Xbox brand. However, the X factor in that question is what Disney and Lucasfilm are saying. However, I remind you that Spider-Man is a PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I guess it depends what deal was done before Like when that game was signed up, like what was agreed and stuff. But I mean, Machine Games, like Wolfenstein is still like another franchise we haven't seen in a while. Like how big is that studio now? I don't know. Like you'd hope that Indiana Jones isn't the only game.
Yeah, you would think that there's a Wolf 3, and actually they spoke about it quite openly. There was an interview with them where someone asked them about Mecha Hitler, because obviously that's a big Wolfenstein thing that isn't in the games, and they sort of said, oh no, we're saving that for the third game. And then even even when they did Youngblood, they did say in some interviews, we set this off in the future, so it's away from the story we're currently telling with BJ Blazkowicz. So there's definitely going to be a Wolf 3, without a shadow of a doubt. It's just a question of when.
Yeah.
And then there's,
what else?
Well,
for
there's
me,
id, but
Ghostwire Tokyo is for me. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Well, there's id, so there's but they've just launched Doom. So I think the question is there any more Doom stuff to come, DLC or whatever that's not been announced yet? Yeah, and then like
I heard
you said,
that was their last one.
Yeah, I think it probably, but you never know, right?
One.
And then obviously, there's Tango, Shinji Mikami, legend, known for Resident Evil, Evil Within, and now Ghostwire Tokyo, which looks rad. But again, it's that thing of it is a PlayStation game for now, and PC.
Okay, yeah. I think because it's like a weird time of them recently being acquired, they're gonna have to rely hard on some of the newer if there's like newer IPs to announce.
Well, Starfield is almost done, so that's the thing for the Bethesda side, right? Starfield is the one.
Yeah.
So I think, but I do think, it's Halo, it's Starfield, it's Forza, and then it's news on all that stuff that's further out. And then there's X Factor questions. It's like this Apple Epic court case. There was an interesting page, interesting bit in the evidence of that, where there were like a couple of pages of evidence that was redacted because it covered sensitive business talks between Microsoft and Nintendo as it related to xCloud, where you can play Xbox games on your phone, and that presumably you can infer from that whole discussion pertains to the concept of having an xCloud app for the Switch. And it's like these things are the X Factor where they could announce that and blow the doors off. So
that would be insane.
Clearly those discussions happened. The evidence leaked that.
Yeah,
we're forgetting the big game, right? Flight Sim for Xbox.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, totally. No,
Alex
it's a
loves
big
this
deal,
game.
dude.
You're laughing, Dorrani, but
millions of people play it.
Do you know what it is?
It's good.
There's a delay in this, and it's messed me up. Flight Simulator. Do you know what it is? Like certain games are always like, when they come up on screen when a game's being announced. Like certain games, I'll just be like, "Come on, man, who is playing these games?" When a game's not for you, you kind of want to hush it along. But I know that this game is so loved.
It's very relaxing.
So I'm like, you fly over your house, and I heard that one of the technologies in it that it renders the world out in real time.
Yes.
Like it downloads the world.
Yeah.
Completely from like.
It's based on
insane.
It's based on like the Bing Maps, Microsoft's version of Google Maps. It's based on that data. So yes, you can actually find your house and land in your garden.
That's awesome.
If your garden's big enough or whatever.
That's awesome.
Your second house.
Me,
if you're Alex, your second house, holiday home.
Flight Simulator. It's for a lot of people. It's not for me personally, but it's for a lot of people.
I think
I don't think my PC can handle it.
Well, that's why like Xbox, it will handle it sort of. But I think one thing we haven't mentioned really is Game Pass, and obviously like Flight Simulator is a good example of a game that I'm not going to buy Flight Simulator, but it'd be on Game Pass. I'm going to play it, and then I might love it. I mean, that's the thing about Game Pass, where you get these games that you wouldn't have played, and then suddenly, actually, I love that game, and you're into it, and then you're buying the DLC and everything else, and that'll be a big part of the whole conference. Probably is like on Game Pass, on Game Pass, on Game Pass.
Yeah, and we're only talking about first-party stuff here, right? As well, but there is that X factor of Microsoft seems to be getting into a little bit of a habit of games that they don't get to begin with, they then just quietly get and drop onto Game Pass. So, like using Square Enix as an example, Dragon Quest 11, just brilliant game. It was on PlayStation, then it was on Switch and PC, and then the Xbox version dropped out of nowhere, and they were like, and it's on Game Pass, and it's one of the best games of the last decade, one of the best games in its genre, and it's really long. Octopath Traveler as well was a Switch and PC only game, and then it just showed up with an Xbox version, no PlayStation version, and the Xbox version just went into Game Pass. That stuff is good gets, and I think we'll get a lot of that this week or this next week.
Yeah, Xbox Game Pass is actually insane. I think we need to have its own have a discussion for it by itself. I had something to say about Xbox Game Pass. C games, so Gears of War done it where the game launched and it was just immediately on Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, is that a plus for like in terms of like revenue and income for like the coalition and Microsoft, or is that a minus?
It's definitely a minus initially. It's a loss leader, right? So it's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's the same thing that Netflix are doing, which Netflix is spending a shitload of money and losing loads of money in order to build up the subscriber base, and then eventually you can take your foot off the gas content wise, and that's when you start making money. But
okay,
it's an eventual thing. Dude, make no mistake, Xbox Game Pass does not make money right now, as far as I know. But it'll get there. That's the idea, right?
In terms of the other side of that, the developer side or the publisher side, like there's a lot of talk of how Game Pass, like people are like, oh, Game Pass is going to stop game sales. People aren't going to buy games. Then you look at, there's so many reports now about how actually it helped the sales of this game, it helped the sales of that game, because it's an awareness thing. Like people are playing it, it's talked about more. So you get like the extra, almost free, obviously, like publicity side as well. So there are definitely like games. I think Descenders, that downhill biking game, they talk about how that game has sold really well. It's on Game Pass, but it continues to sell really well. So I think people were down, like people were like, it's never going to work because people aren't going to buy games anymore. But actually, people are still buying games.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that Gears, when it launched, they were like scared about the development of it, or like the final product, so they just said, let's just whack it on Xbox Game Pass so people actually play the game, or they were fearing that it weren't going to sell well. That was always like how I
think it was. I think that was more.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
Yeah, I mean Microsoft announced, I think it was, I can't remember how long after Game Pass launched, that all of their first party games were going to be day one on the service. It wasn't initially, it wasn't the case, but then they announced it, possibly with Sea of Thieves. I can't remember which the first one was, but they announced that they were going to bring all their games to Game Pass day one as that was a big selling point for Game Pass then, right? You had an Xbox and you could guarantee that there would be these games coming day one, and it made the value was just like seemed incredible at that point, right? You were getting these £50 games like Gears, like Sea of Thieves. And I think Gears 5, I think they were worried about it. I think possibly the fact that like there may have been a commentary around it, that there was worry from people that don't understand or like Gears potentially. But I don't think anyone internally was worried about that game. Like, it was a very good game. I think they'd have known that. They'd have tested it. They'd have known that people would like it. But I think it's just a case of, you're either in one camp where you see Game Pass as incredible value and you get all these games and you can pick and choose what you want to play, and there's less of a stress around gaming now. You just jump in whatever you want to play. And the other group are, I will never buy or subscribe to anything because I want to own everything. I want to own all my games, and I see subscriptions as the end of gaming as we know it, because we'll never have ownership and games will change fundamentally because of this subscription service. That hasn't really happened yet. I don't think that's a thing that's come to pass at all. But who knows? Like, it's still very early days for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. Thanks for the answers, guys. Good insight. Yeah, let's wrap this up. I think. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I think
to just the whole.
Yeah, like I don't know if we can, like, Alex touched on it a bit with third party titles. I think a big thing for Microsoft and would get everyone talking would be getting a third-party game either exclusive for a year or whatever, even though people moan about it, it works. Third-party exclusive on Game Pass or just on the platform, probably would be on Game Pass if they get it exclusive for a year. That just kind of like Sony are doing it. I'm sure Microsoft will continue to try and do it as well. That would just makes news, like a big game that maybe we're not expecting to be on Game Pass.
And there's this X factor in, Microsoft has said it isn't necessarily done with studio acquisitions. They've clearly got a problem in Asia where they clearly don't have, they don't have like anything in Japan really or in Asia, so they need something out there. So that's the thing, is like, can they get a big third party get of a big exclusive third party game, but also can they get a big third party exclusive from Asia while Sony is just hoovering up every Final Fantasy game in existence and stuff? Can they go back to Capcom and say, let's do a Dead Rising reboot, for instance? Yes, there's that. Or can they acquire a Japanese studio, or a Korean studio somewhere out there to give that flavour of game? That's the other X factor that we haven't really talked about here. Is just, will we see any acquisitions? And I think that's an impossible thing to debate or talk about in this format. It's just like we wait and see if it happens.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just excited. I just like to see what they do, really. I hope that it's not all things that we saw last year just continued. I would like to see something like brand new as well. If I don't want to see more CG trailers, that's one thing I just dislike. I don't want to see games that are announced, but it's just the title, and then it's like it's coming out in 5 years. I'm not a fan of that. And I'm rooting for Xbox. I feel like they've had a rough few years for real, and I hope that they start gearing up, because Sony are doing a lot right now, exclusive wise, and I really hope that Xbox can get the ball rolling and snowball into how they used to be. Yeah.
That makes two of us.
That's my closing statement on this one.
Killer Instinct 2. Killer Instinct 2.
We need to make a bingo card. We need to make a
Yeah,
I know what you're going to say, Tom.
Right in the middle of that bingo card, PGR. It's just there, right in the middle, big letters. I mean, the whole bingo card. Just make it that one thing. I've got one big pen. I can just slap down on it. Done.
I think it's more likely we get a Killer Instinct 2 than a Project Gotham, I'm afraid.
It probably is. But I mean, you live in hope.
Yeah.
I think I saw.
What do we have if not hope?
A little bit. Nah, definitely. Okay, cool. Let's wrap it up there. That has been Tom, Dorrani, and Alex from VG247. Make sure you check out the website. We are going to be covering all things E3 2021. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.